Wealth, power, success. But when he discovers an abandoned baby in a restaurant bathroom, his world shifts forever. What starts as a temporary guardianship soon becomes the most important fight of his life. But fate has one more twist in store. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The night was cold when Ricardo Ferraz stepped out of La Bellevue restaurant. He'd just closed a deal worth millions with investors who trusted his business sense. At 45, Ricardo had everything money could buy. A mansion overlooking the city, luxury cars, and the respect of the business world. But something was missing, though he rarely admitted it to himself. "Good night, Mr. Ferraz," said the valet, handing him his car keys. Ricardo nodded and was about to walk toward his car when he heard a faint sound, a cry. He stopped and listened again. It was coming from the ladies' restroom near the restaurant entrance. "Strange," he muttered. The restaurant was nearly empty. Most staff had gone home. The crying continued, soft but unmistakable. Ricardo hesitated, then walked to the restroom door. He knocked. "Is anyone there?" No answer, just the same weak crying. He pushed the door open slowly. What he saw made his heart skip a beat. A baby, small and wrapped in a thin blanket, lying in the bathroom sink. The infant's face was red from crying, tiny fists waving in the air. "What in the world?" Ricardo gasped, moving closer. Beside the baby was a crumpled note. With trembling hands, he picked it up and read, "Please don't judge me. I wanted to be the mother he deserves, but life didn't give me a choice. If you found my son, take care of him. Give him a future. I will always love him." Ricardo looked at the baby boy, who had stopped crying and was now staring at him with innocent eyes. Something stirred inside his chest, an emotion he hadn't felt in years. "How could someone leave you here?" he whispered. The bathroom door opened and Marta, the restaurant's manager, walked in. She froze when she saw Ricardo standing there with the baby. "Mr. Ferraz, what's going on?" "I found him here. Someone abandoned him," Ricardo explained, showing her the note. Marta covered her mouth in shock. "We should call the police." Ricardo nodded, but as he looked down at the baby again, something changed in his expression. "Yes, call them. But first..." He carefully picked up the infant, cradling him awkwardly in his arms. The baby cooed, reaching for Ricardo's face. An hour later, the police and social services arrived. Officer Santos took statements, while a social worker named Lucia Martinez examined the baby. "He seems healthy, about 3 months old," Lucia said. "We'll take him to a temporary shelter tonight, then start looking for a foster home tomorrow." Ricardo, who had been watching from a distance, stepped forward. "What will happen to him?" Lucia sighed. "The system is overcrowded. He'll likely move between foster homes until we can find a permanent placement, or his mother comes forward." Ricardo frowned. He'd grown up in that same system after losing his parents in a car accident. He remembered the cold institutions, the feeling of being unwanted. It had taken him years to overcome those scars. "What if I take him?" "Just until you find a permanent solution," Ricardo heard himself saying, surprising even himself. Officer Santos raised an eyebrow. "Sir, this isn't like taking home a stray pet. There are procedures, requirements." "I understand," Ricardo interrupted. "But I have resources. I can provide everything he needs, better than a shelter, at least for now." Lucia studied Ricardo with skeptical eyes. "Mr. Ferraz, I know who you are. You run 3 companies. Your schedule is probably packed with meetings. Taking care of a baby is a full-time job." "I can hire help," Ricardo insisted, not understanding why he was fighting so hard for this. "Please, just consider it." After lengthy discussions and several phone calls, Lucia reluctantly agreed to a temporary emergency placement, pending a home inspection the next day. Ricardo signed numerous papers, promising to bring the baby to social services in the morning. "Do you even have baby supplies at home?" Lucia asked as she handed him a small bag with emergency formula and diapers. "I'll manage," Ricardo said, holding the baby carefully. "Does he have a name?" Lucia shook her head. "Not that we know of." Ricardo looked down at the small face. "Then I'll call him Miguel for now. It means who is like God." It had been his father's name. The drive home was surreal. Ricardo had his driver, Carlos, stop at an all-night store where they bought basic baby Supplies. More formula, diapers, a crib that would be delivered the next day, and some clothes. Sir, if I may ask, what are you doing? Carlos asked as they loaded the items into the car. I wish I knew, Ricardo answered honestly when they arrived. At his mansion, Maria, his housekeeper for 15 years, was waiting up despite the late hour. Her eyes widened when she saw the baby in Ricardo's arms. Don Ricardo, what is this? This is Miguel. He'll be staying with us for a while. Ricardo explained briefly what had happened. Maria crossed herself. The poor little angel. But sir, do you know anything about babies? Ricardo smiled wryly. No, that's why I need your help. That night was a crash course in parenting. Maria, who had raised 3 children of her own, showed Ricardo how to prepare formula, change diapers and hold Miguel properly. The baby seemed content, falling asleep against Ricardo's chest. You should get some sleep, sir. Babies don't care about business schedules. He'll be up in a few hours, Maria warned. Ricardo nodded but didn't move from the armchair where he sat with Miguel. I'll stay here a bit longer. After Maria left, Ricardo studied the sleeping baby. What was he doing? His life was about board meetings and business deals, not midnight feedings, yet somehow holding this child felt right. Well, Miguel, he whispered, I guess it's just you and me tonight. The next morning, Camila Suarez, Ricardo's executive assistant, arrived at the mansion for their usual breakfast meeting. She found Ricardo in the kitchen, looking exhausted, feeding a baby while Maria prepared coffee. I'm sorry, am I in the wrong house? Camila asked, stunned. Ricardo looked up. Dark circles ringed his eyes. Camila, meet Miguel. You had a baby and didn't tell me? She joked. But her confusion was evident. Ricardo explained the situation as Miguel happily drank his formula. So you're telling me you found an abandoned baby and just brought him home? Camila couldn't believe what she was hearing. In the 5 years she'd worked for Ricardo, she'd never seen him show much interest in anything outside of business. Temporarily, Ricardo clarified. Social services is coming for a home inspection today. And you're serious about this? You want to foster him? Until they find a better solution, Ricardo said, but something in his voice suggested he was already attached. Camila sat down, still processing. Well, we need to rearrange your schedule. The Tokyo investors meeting needs to be moved. No, Ricardo interrupted. Business continues as usual. I'll make this work. With all due respect, sir, babies don't fit neatly into corporate schedules. Before Ricardo could respond, the doorbell rang. Maria went to answer it, returning with Lucia, Martinez and another woman. Good morning, Mr. Ferraz, Lucia said formally. This is my supervisor, Mrs. Oliveira. We're here for the home inspection. For the next hour, the 2 women walked through the mansion, asking questions and taking notes. They seemed impressed by the space but concerned about Ricardo's lifestyle. Your work schedule is concerning, Mrs. Oliveira said bluntly. A child needs stability and attention. I understand, Ricardo replied. I'm already arranging for qualified childcare and I can adapt my schedule. It's not just about having people to watch him, Lucia explained. Children need bonding, attachment. Ricardo looked at Miguel, who was now sleeping in a makeshift crib. I know, and I'm willing to provide that. The social workers exchanged glances. We'll allow the temporary placement to continue for now, Mrs. Oliveira finally said, but we'll be monitoring the situation closely with weekly visits. And, Mr. Ferraz, we'll still be looking for a permanent foster family. After they left, Camila approached Ricardo. Are you sure about this? Your life is about to get very complicated. Ricardo smiled slightly. My life has always been about solving complicated problems. This is different. This is a child, not a business deal. I know, Ricardo said softly, but something tells me this is important, maybe the most important thing I've ever done. Over the next few days, Ricardo's mansion transformed. A nursery took shape in the room next to his. Baby items filled the once minimal space. Ricardo hired Helena, an experienced nanny recommended by Maria, but insisted on being involved in Miguel's care whenever he was home. His business associates were shocked when they learned about the situation. Have you lost your mind? Asked Eduardo, his business partner of 20 years, during an office meeting. Since when do you care about abandoned children? You wouldn't understand, Ricardo replied calmly, reviewing contracts while a baby monitor sat on his desk. What about Sofia? Eduardo asked pointedly. Have you told her? Ricardo's jaw tightened. Sofia Mendez was his on-again, off-again girlfriend, a model and socialite who enjoyed the benefits of his wealth and status. Not yet, Eduardo shook his head. This won't end well. That evening, as Ricardo was giving Miguel his bath, he'd insisted on learning to do himself. The doorbell rang. Maria answered it, and moments later, Sofia's perfume filled the bathroom doorway. So it's true, she said, staring at Ricardo kneeling beside the baby bathtub. I thought Eduardo was joking. Ricardo stood, drying his hands. Sofia, I wasn't expecting you. Obviously. Her eyes never left the baby. What is this, Ricardo? Some kind of midlife crisis? His name is Miguel, Ricardo said firmly. And no, it's not a crisis. He needed help. Sofia laughed bitterly. Since when do you care about helping strangers? Especially ones that drool. Before Ricardo could answer, Miguel splashed happily, getting water on Sofia's designer dress. She stepped back with a look of disgust. This is temporary, right? Once they find his mother or whatever. Ricardo didn't respond immediately, focusing on lifting Miguel from the water and wrapping him in a towel. Ricardo, Sofia pressed. I don't know, he admitted. Maybe, Sofia's eyes narrowed. You can't be serious. This isn't you. You hate mess, noise, unpredictability. That's why we work. We both value our independence. Ricardo looked at her, then at Miguel, who was cooing contentedly in his arms. Maybe I'm changing. Well, call me when you're done playing house, Sofia snapped, turning to leave. At the door, she paused. Don't expect me to be waiting. After she left, Ricardo carried Miguel to the nursery, dressing him in soft pajamas. I think I just got dumped because of you, he told the baby with a small smile, probably for the best. That night, as Miguel slept peacefully in his crib, Ricardo sat in the nursery thinking about how much his life had changed in just a few days. He'd always defined himself by his success, his wealth, his power. Now somehow those things seemed less important. His phone rang, Camilla, calling about an emergency with their West Coast operations. As Ricardo handled the crisis from the comfort of the rocking chair beside Miguel's crib, he realized something profound. For the first time in his life, his work wasn't the most important thing in the room. 1 month passed, and Miguel settled into life at Ricardo's mansion. The temporary arrangement began to feel more permanent as each day passed. The nursery, once hastily assembled, was now a cheerful room filled with stuffed animals, colorful mobiles, and photos of Miguel that Ricardo had taken with his phone. Ricardo was in his home office early one morning, participating in a video conference with investors from Hong Kong, while Helena watched Miguel. The baby's laugh echoed through the baby monitor on his desk. As you can see from the quarterly projections, Ricardo paused as Miguel's laughter grew louder. He smiled apologetically to the serious faces on his screen. Excuse me for one moment. He muted the call and walked quickly to the nursery where Helena was playing peekaboo with Miguel. Is everything okay? Ricardo asked. Helena looked up, surprised. Yes, Mr. Ferraz, he's just happy this morning. Ricardo nodded, watching as Miguel kicked his little legs excitedly on his playmat. I'll be done with my meeting in 20 minutes. Could you bring him to my office after that? Of course, sir. Ricardo returned to his meeting but found it hard to concentrate. The numbers and charts that once consumed his attention now seemed less important compared to Miguel's laughter. After finishing the call, Ricardo sat back in his chair. His phone rang. It was Lucia Martinez from Social Services. Good morning, Mr. Ferraz, she said. I'm calling to schedule our weekly visit, but I also have some news. Ricardo felt his heart tighten. What news? We may have located Miguel's mother. The words hit Ricardo like a physical blow. He knew this day might come, but he wasn't prepared for how much it would affect him. Are you certain it's her? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Not entirely. A young woman named Ana Oliveira has come forward claiming to be his mother. She matches the time frame and the general description from the restaurant staff. We're arranging for DNA testing. Ricardo took a deep breath. I see, and if she is the mother, then Miguel would be returned to her, assuming she's fit to care for him, Lucia explained. But Mr. Ferraz, please understand this is still preliminary. After hanging up, Ricardo sat motionless in his chair. The thought of losing Miguel made his chest ache in a way he'd never experienced before. Helena knocked on the door, bringing in Miguel, who was wide awake and smiling. Ricardo took him into his arms, holding him a little tighter than usual. "You've gotten attached," Helena observed quietly. Ricardo nodded. "I never expected this to happen." "Children have a way of stealing our hearts," she said. "My sister fosters children. It's always hard when they leave, but she says loving them while they're with you is what matters." Ricardo looked down at Miguel's trusting face. "What if I don't want him to leave?" Later that day, Camila arrived with documents requiring Ricardo's signature. She found him in the living room, watching Miguel sleep in his portable crib. "You look worried," she said, placing the papers on the coffee table. Ricardo told her about the call from social services. "I knew this was a possibility, but now that it might happen..." His voice trailed off. Camila sat beside him. "You want to keep him, don't you?" "Is that crazy?" "A month ago, I barely knew how to hold a baby." "It's not crazy," Camila said softly. "But Ricardo, are you sure? Parenting is forever. Your whole life would change." "It already has," he replied, looking at Miguel. "And I think it's changed for the better." The doorbell rang and Maria went to answer it. She returned looking uncomfortable. "Sir, Ms. Sophia is here." Sophia walked in behind Maria, dressed impeccably as always. Her eyes immediately went to the sleeping baby, then to Ricardo. "I was hoping we could talk," she said, glancing meaningfully at Camila. Camila stood. "I'll come back later for those signatures." After she left, Sophia sat where Camila had been, keeping a careful distance from the portable crib. "You haven't returned my calls," she said. "I've been busy." Sophia sighed. "Look, Ricardo, I may have overreacted last time. I was shocked, that's all." Ricardo raised an eyebrow. "And now?" "Now I've had time to think," she said, moving closer to him. "This situation doesn't have to change things between us. The baby has a nanny, right? We can still make time for us." "His name is Miguel," Ricardo said firmly. "And he's not a situation." Sophia's expression hardened. "Fine, Miguel, but be realistic, Ricardo. This was never meant to be permanent. Soon they'll find his family, or a proper foster home, and things will go back to normal." Ricardo looked at her, suddenly seeing Sophia clearly, for perhaps the first time. He'd always been attracted to her beauty, enjoyed her company and the uncomplicated nature of their relationship. But now he realized how little they actually shared in terms of values. "They may have found his mother," he said. Sophia brightened. "See, problem solved." "No," Ricardo shook his head. "Because I'm thinking of fighting to keep him." Sophia's face fell. "You can't be serious. You're not father material, Ricardo. You work 12-hour days. You've never even mentioned wanting children before." "People change," Ricardo said simply. Sophia stood, her patience clearly gone. "This isn't changing. This is a complete personality transplant. What happened to the man who said family life was for people who couldn't handle real success?" Miguel stirred at her raised voice, making small, whimpering sounds. Ricardo immediately went to him, picking him up gently. "That man met someone who showed him what real success looks like," Ricardo said quietly, rocking Miguel back to sleep. Sophia grabbed her purse. "You've lost your mind. Call me when you find it." Again. This time, Ricardo knew she wouldn't be coming back. Strangely, he felt only relief as the door closed behind her. 2 days later, Ricardo sat nervously in a coffee shop, waiting. Lucia had arranged a supervised meeting with Ana Oliveira, the woman claiming to be Miguel's mother. Ricardo had insisted on being present. When Ana entered, Ricardo was surprised. She was young, barely 20, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes that darted nervously around the café. She didn't look like the irresponsible person he'd imagined would abandon a baby. Lucia made the introductions, and Ana sat across from Ricardo, hands tightly clutching her coffee cup. "Thank you for taking care of my son," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ricardo studied her face, looking for confirmation this was indeed Miguel's mother. "Why did you leave him at the restaurant?" Ana looked down. "I was desperate. I lost my job when my boss found out I was pregnant. The baby's father left when I told him. I'd been living in a shelter, but they couldn't keep us anymore. That night I had nowhere to go. Tears filled her eyes. I thought a fancy place like that, someone with money would find him, someone who could give him everything I couldn't. Ricardo's anger softened slightly. Why come forward now? I found a job, Anna said. It doesn't pay much, but I've saved enough for a small apartment, and I missed him every single day. I never stopped thinking about him. Ricardo wanted to disbelieve her, to find holes in her story, but her pain seemed genuine. The DNA results should be back in a few days, Lucia reminded them. If Anna is confirmed as Miguel's mother, we'll begin discussing next steps. Ricardo nodded stiffly. And if she is, what rights do I have? I've been caring for him, bonding with him, Lucia sighed. Mr. Ferraz, legally, your status is temporary. Guardian. If the biological mother is fit to parent, the courts generally favor reunification. Anna looked at Ricardo, seeming to truly see him for the first time. You really care about him, don't you? More than I thought possible, Ricardo admitted. Anna's eyes filled with tears again. Can you tell me about him, what he likes, what his routine is? Ricardo found himself sharing stories about Miguel, his first smile, how he loved bath time, the stuffed elephant he couldn't sleep without. As he talked, Anna listened intently, occasionally wiping away tears. He sounds happy, she said finally. He is, Ricardo confirmed, but he deserves to know his mother. The words surprised even him. Part of him wanted to fight, to use every resource he had to keep Miguel. But seeing Anna's genuine love for her son made it complicated. That evening, Eduardo came to Ricardo's house for their monthly chess game, a tradition they'd maintained since college. Ricardo explained the situation as they set up the board. So, she seems legitimate? Eduardo asked, arranging the white pieces. Yes, Ricardo admitted. She's young, struggling, but she clearly loves Miguel. The DNA test will tell us for sure. Eduardo moved his first pawn. And if she is the mother, will you fight her for custody? Ricardo stared at the board. I don't. No. A month ago I would have said yes without hesitation, use my money, my lawyers, whatever it took. But now I wonder what's best for Miguel. Ricardo moved his own pawn. He deserves his mother if she can provide a stable home. Eduardo studied his friend. The Ricardo I know doesn't give up without a fight. It's not about giving up, Ricardo said. It's about doing what's right. The next morning, Ricardo called his lawyer, Rebecca Torres, and asked her to come to the house. When she arrived, he explained the situation. I need to know my options, he said as they sat in his study. Rebecca took notes. If the DNA confirms she's the biological mother, and if she's fit to parent, it would be an uphill battle. However, you do have financial stability on your side. Meaning I could drag this through the courts for years, Ricardo said grimly. Essentially, yes, though that would be hard on everyone, including Miguel. Ricardo rubbed his temples. What? About shared custody? Or some arrangement where she's involved but he continues to live with me? Rebecca looked thoughtful. It's possible, but it would depend on her willingness to agree. Some sort of co-parenting arrangement. After she left, Ricardo went to check on Miguel, who was napping under Helena's watchful eye. Looking at the sleeping baby, Ricardo thought about Anna's face when she talked about her son. The love, the regret, the hope. What was truly best for Miguel? 3 days later, Ricardo's phone rang. It was Lucia Martinez. The DNA results are back, she said. Ana Oliveira is confirmed as Miguel's biological mother. Though he'd expected it, the news still felt like a punch to the gut. I understand. What happens now? We'll be implementing a transition plan, supervised visits at first, then gradually increasing Anna's time with Miguel before full reunification. Ricardo sat heavily in his office chair. How long? Typically about a month, Lucia replied. Mr. Ferraz, I know this is difficult. I want to meet with Anna, Ricardo interrupted. Alone, without social services, just to talk. There was a pause on the line. That's not standard procedure. Please. Ricardo rarely begged for anything, but he did now. I'm not trying to interfere with your process. I just need to speak with her. After some consideration, Lucia agreed to ask Anna if she would be willing to meet with Ricardo privately. To his surprise, Anna agreed. They met the following afternoon at a quiet park near Ricardo's office. Anna looked nervous but determined as she sat beside him on a bench. "Social services told me you've been a good guardian," she said after an awkward silence. "They said Miguel is thriving with you." Ricardo nodded. "I've tried my best." He took a deep breath. "Anna, I asked to meet you because I have a proposal." Anna looked wary. "What kind of proposal?" "I know you're Miguel's mother. I know you love him and want what's best for him," Ricardo began. "But in the short time he's been with me, I've come to love him too. The thought of him being gone completely from my life is—" He paused, struggling to find words for the emptiness he felt. "What are you suggesting?" Anna asked cautiously. Ricardo turned to face her directly. "What if we found a way to both be part of Miguel's life? Some kind of shared arrangement?" Anna looked confused. "Like shared custody? But we're strangers. We're from completely different worlds." "Yes, but we both love Miguel," Ricardo pointed out. "I could help financially. You wouldn't have to struggle to provide for him. He could have opportunities you might not be able to give him alone." "And what would you get out of this?" Anna asked, suspicion clear in her voice. "The chance to still be in his life," Ricardo answered honestly. "To watch him grow up, to be there for him." Anna was quiet for a long time, considering his words. "I don't know. This isn't what I expected." "Just think about it," Ricardo said. "I'm not trying to take him from you. I just want what's best for Miguel." As they parted, Anna promised to consider his proposal. Ricardo returned to his office, uncertain what would happen next. Later that week, Lucia called to inform him that the first supervised visit between Anna and Miguel was scheduled for the following day at the social services office. Ricardo personally brought Miguel to the visit, carrying him and the diaper bag into the plain government building. When Anna saw her son, her eyes filled with tears. Miguel, now capable of more expressions, looked curiously at this new person. "Hi, my sweet boy," Anna said softly, reaching for him tentatively. Ricardo carefully handed Miguel to his mother, their hands briefly touching during the transfer. For a moment, they were connected by the child they both loved. As Anna held Miguel close, whispering to him in Portuguese, Ricardo watched with mixed emotions. There was pain, certainly, at the thought of losing him. But there was also something unexpected, a sense that maybe, just maybe, there was room in Miguel's life for both of them. The social worker supervising the visit noted how natural Anna seemed with Miguel, how quickly he settled in her arms. It was clear to everyone in the room that this was indeed his mother. When the visit ended, Anna reluctantly handed Miguel back to Ricardo. "He seems happy," she said. "You've taken good care of him." Ricardo nodded. "Have you thought about what we discussed?" Anna met his eyes. "Yes. And I think maybe we could try to find a way, for Miguel's sake." It wasn't a definite answer, but it was hope. And for now, that would have to be enough. As Ricardo carried Miguel to the car, he realized that somehow this tiny human had changed everything. His priorities, his outlook on life, even his understanding of what family could mean. Whatever happened next, nothing would ever be the same again. 2 weeks of supervised visits passed. Each time Ricardo brought Miguel to the social services office, Anna was waiting with a bright smile. The baby was beginning to recognize her, reaching for her when she approached. It filled Ricardo with complicated emotions, happiness that Miguel was bonding with his mother, and fear of what that might eventually mean for him. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Ricardo sat in Lucia Martinez's office for their regular case review. The walls were covered with children's artwork, a stark contrast to the seriousness of the conversations that happened there. "Anna has been consistent with her visits," Lucia reported, reviewing her notes. "She's also completed the parenting classes. We recommended and secured stable employment." Ricardo nodded. "That's good." "It is," Lucia agreed, studying his face. "Have you two discussed your proposal for a shared arrangement?" "Not in detail," Ricardo admitted. We've been focused on Miguel's transition. Lucia closed her folder. Mr. Ferraz, I appreciate what you're trying to do. It's unusual in my experience for a temporary guardian to be so accommodating. Ricardo smiled slightly. Trust me, if you'd told me 3 months ago I'd be in this position, I wouldn't have believed it. Love changes us, Lucia said simply. But I should warn you that these arrangements can be complicated. Different parenting styles, expectations, backgrounds, they all create potential conflicts. I understand, but I believe it's worth trying for Miguel's sake. As Ricardo drove home from the meeting, he called Camila to check on work matters. She'd been managing more of the day-to-day operations as Ricardo adjusted his schedule to accommodate Miguel's needs. The Singapore deal is finalized, she reported, and Eduardo handled the board meeting. Everything's under control. Thank you, Ricardo said sincerely. I couldn't do this without you. How did the meeting with social services go? Ricardo sighed. The reunification process is moving forward. Ana is doing everything right. And how are you feeling about that? Conflicted, he admitted. I want what's best for Miguel, but you love him, Camila finished for him. Yes, Ricardo said simply. More than I thought possible. When he arrived home, Helena greeted him with a worried expression. Sir, there's been a situation. Ricardo immediately tensed. Is Miguel all right? He's fine, he's napping. But Ana Oliveira is here. Here? At the house? Helena nodded. She said she needed to speak with you urgently. I put her in the living room. Ricardo found Ana perched nervously on the edge of his sofa. She stood when he entered. I'm sorry to come unannounced, she said quickly, but I had to talk to you. Is everything okay? Ricardo asked, gesturing for her to sit back down. Ana twisted her hands in her lap. My landlord sold the building. All tenants have 30 days to vacate. I've been looking for another apartment, but everything is either too expensive or in terrible neighborhoods. Ricardo listened, understanding the implications immediately. Without stable housing, Ana's custody case would be compromised. And social services doesn't know yet. Ana shook her head. I'm afraid they'll delay returning Miguel to me, or worse. What can I do to help? Ricardo asked without hesitation. Ana looked surprised by his offer. I don't know, I felt like you should know. We've been talking about this shared arrangement, but if I can't even provide a safe home, Ricardo thought for a moment. I have a property, a small house in a good neighborhood. I bought it as an investment years ago. It's sitting empty right now. Ana's eyes widened. Are you offering to let me stay there? It would be temporary until you find something else, Ricardo clarified. Or longer, if that's what works best for Miguel. It's not far from here, which would make our shared arrangement easier. I couldn't afford the rent on a place like that, Ana said, her pride evident. We could work something out, Ricardo suggested. The most important thing is that Miguel has a safe, stable environment. Ana studied his face. Why are you doing this? You could have fought me for custody, used your money, your lawyers. Instead, you're trying to help me. Ricardo considered his answer carefully. When I found Miguel that night, something changed in me. For the first time, I started to think about someone else's needs before my own. And what Miguel needs is both of us. Ana wiped away a tear. I'd like to see this house. That weekend, Ricardo drove Ana to the property. A modest but well-maintained 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. It had been furnished but sat unused for years, with Ricardo's property manager checking on it periodically. Ana walked through the rooms slowly, taking it all in. This is beautiful, she whispered. It needs some updating, Ricardo acknowledged, but it's safe and ready to live in. They sat at the kitchen table working out details. Ricardo proposed a minimal rent that Ana could afford with her new job, with the possibility of adjusting as her situation improved. And Miguel? Ana asked the question they'd been circling around. How would this work with him? We should come up with a schedule, Ricardo suggested. Maybe he stays with you on weekends at first while you're settling in. Then we can gradually adjust until we find what works. And legally? I've spoken with my lawyer. We could draft a co-parenting agreement. It wouldn't be a traditional custody arrangement, but it could work. Ana took a deep breath. I never imagined sharing my child with a stranger, But you're not really a stranger anymore, are you? Not to Miguel. I hope not to you either, Ricardo said sincerely. Ana smiled slightly. No, not to me either. They agreed that Ana would move in the following week. Ricardo would help with the transition and inform social services of the arrangement. When Ricardo told Lucia about the plan, she was surprised but cautiously supportive. This is unconventional, she admitted, but if both parties are committed to making it work, it could be beneficial for Miguel. We'll need to document everything properly. The day Ana moved in, Ricardo brought Miguel to the house to help her settle. There wasn't much to move, just a few suitcases and boxes containing all her worldly possessions. Ricardo had arranged for the house to be stocked with necessities, including a fully furnished nursery that matched the one in his mansion. You didn't have to do all this, Ana said, looking at the carefully prepared baby room. I wanted Miguel to feel comfortable in both homes, Ricardo explained. Same crib, same toys, same routine. Ana touched the crib gently. It's perfect. That evening, as the sun set, the three of them sat on the back patio. Miguel was in Ana's lap, playing with a rattle Ricardo had brought. It was strange how natural it felt, like they were forming some new kind of family that didn't have a name yet. Tomorrow's the first official overnight, Ana said, a hint of nervousness in her voice. You'll be fine, Ricardo assured her, and I'm just a phone call away if you need anything. It feels wrong to take him from you, Ana admitted. After all you've done. Ricardo watched Miguel, his heart aching with both love and the anticipation of separation. We're not taking from each other. We're giving Miguel something better than either of us could provide alone. The next day, Ricardo packed Miguel's overnight bag with meticulous care. He included the stuffed elephant Miguel couldn't sleep without, his favorite blanket, and detailed notes about his nighttime routine. Helena watched with sympathetic eyes. It's just one night, she reminded him gently. I know, Ricardo said, zipping the bag. But it's the first of many. When he dropped Miguel off at Ana's, at the house he now thought of as Ana's, though he still owned it, the baby went happily to his mother. Ricardo lingered, going over his notes with Ana, checking and rechecking that everything was in place. Ricardo, Ana finally said with a gentle smile, we'll be okay, I promise. Leaving was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. The house felt emptier than it had in months without Miguel's presence. Ricardo tried to catch up on work, but found himself checking his phone constantly for messages from Ana. At 9 p.m., his phone chimed with a photo of Miguel sleeping peacefully in his crib. The caption read, "All good, sleep tight." Ricardo sat in his home office for a long time after that, thinking about how completely his life had changed. 3 months ago, he'd been focused solely on business, on deals and profits and expansion. Now his heart was tied to a tiny human who wouldn't remember any of this, and to a young woman he'd never have crossed paths with in his old life. Eduardo dropped by unannounced later that evening, carrying a bottle of expensive scotch. I figured you could use this, he said, finding Ricardo in his office. First night of empty nest syndrome. Ricardo managed a smile as Eduardo poured them each a drink. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's known you for 20 years, Eduardo replied, settling into a chair. So how's it going with this unusual arrangement? Ricardo sipped his scotch. It's early, but so far so good. Ana is not what I expected. Meaning, she's young, yes, and she's struggled, but she's intelligent, determined. She loves Miguel fiercely. Eduardo studied his friend. You sound like you admire her. I do, Ricardo realized. She could have given up, but she didn't. She fought to get her life together, to be worthy of her son. And the two of you, playing house together? How's that working? Ricardo frowned at Eduardo's choice of words. We're not playing house and we're trying to co-parent. Is that all it is? Eduardo asked pointedly. What are you suggesting? Eduardo shrugged. Just observing that you seem to have developed a certain fondness for Miguel's mother. That's ridiculous, Ricardo said dismissively. We've barely known each other a month. I respect her as Miguel's mother, that's all. If you say so, Eduardo replied, not looking convinced. But I've never seen you go to these lengths for anyone, not even Sophia. After Eduardo left, Ricardo thought about his friend's implications. Was there something more to his feelings for Ana? He'd been so focused on Miguel, on creating this arrangement for his sake, that he hadn't considered any other possibilities. No, he decided. This was about Miguel. Ana was Miguel's mother, nothing more. This whole situation was complicated enough without adding romantic entanglements. The weekend passed slowly. Ricardo tried to catch up on work, but found the house too quiet. By Sunday afternoon, he was restless, wondering how Ana and Miguel were doing. Finally, he called. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Not at all," Ana replied. "We just finished lunch. Miguel's trying to decide if he likes peas. So far, the verdict is no." Ricardo smiled at the image. "I was wondering if you'd like some company, I could bring dinner." There was a brief pause. "That would be nice," Ana said. "Miguel would like to see you." "Just Miguel?" Ricardo found himself asking. Ana's soft laugh came through the phone. "I wouldn't mind seeing you either." Ricardo stopped to pick up dinner from his favorite restaurant, simple comfort food that he thought Ana would enjoy. When he arrived at the house, the sight of them together made his heart swell. Miguel was on a playmat on the living room floor, Ana beside him, both laughing as Miguel tried to grab a colorful toy. "Look who's here," Ana said when she noticed Ricardo. "It's Ricardo." Miguel turned at the sound of Ricardo's name, his face lighting up with recognition. He made excited noises, arms reaching up. Ricardo set down the food and went immediately to the baby, lifting him into a hug. "I missed you, little one," he whispered. The three of them ate dinner together, talking easily about Miguel's weekend. His first tooth that seemed to be coming in, his attempts to roll over, the way he'd slept through the night without waking. It struck Ricardo how domestic it all felt, like they were a normal family sharing a Sunday dinner, not a wealthy businessman, a struggling young mother, and a baby who had brought them together through extraordinary circumstances. After dinner, Ricardo helped Ana give Miguel his bath, the two of them working together, as if they'd been doing it for years. When it was time for Miguel's bedtime, they both went to his room. Ana sat in the rocking chair with Miguel in her arms, singing a soft Portuguese lullaby. Ricardo leaned against the doorframe, watching them, feeling a sense of rightness he couldn't explain. Once Miguel was asleep, Ana carefully placed him in his crib. As they stepped out of the nursery, she turned to Ricardo. "Thank you for coming over," she said softly. "I think he missed you." "I missed him too," Ricardo admitted. "More than I expected." They stood in the hallway, suddenly awkward without Miguel as a buffer between them. "Would you like some coffee?" Ana offered. "Or we could open that wine in the kitchen." Ricardo nodded. "Wine sounds good." They sat on the patio, sipping wine and talking, long after the sun went down. Ana told Ricardo about her childhood in Brazil, coming to America with her mother when she was 15, losing her mother to cancer 2 years later. Ricardo found himself sharing stories he rarely told anyone about growing up in foster care after his parents died, his determination to succeed so he'd never be vulnerable again. "Is that why you connected with Miguel so quickly?" Ana asked. "Because you know what it's like to lose parents?" Ricardo considered her question. "Maybe. I just know that when I found him, something clicked, like I was meant to be there that night. I believe in fate," Ana said, "that things happen for a reason. Maybe Miguel needed both of us." When Ricardo finally left that night, something had shifted between them. He wasn't sure what it was, but he felt it. A new understanding, a deeper connection that went beyond their shared love for Miguel. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Miguel stayed with Ana during weekends and with Ricardo during the week, when Ana worked long hours at her job as an administrative assistant. They spoke daily, coordinating schedules, sharing stories about Miguel's development. Sometimes Ricardo would join them for dinner on weekends, or Ana would come to the mansion for dinner during the week. Social services officially approved their co-parenting arrangement, with Lucia Martinez noting in her final report that it was an unusual but positive solution that prioritizes the child's well-being. The arrangement worked, but it wasn't without challenges. Their parenting styles sometimes clashed. Ricardo's tendency to solve problems with money versus Ana's desire for Miguel to learn the value of simple things. But they worked through these differences with surprising ease, always keeping Miguel's interests at the center. One evening, Ricardo arrived at Ana's house for their weekly co-parenting discussion. These meetings had become important to both of them, a time to talk about Miguel without distractions. Ana opened the door looking worried. "Miguel has a fever," she said immediately. "It just started about an hour ago." Ricardo followed her quickly to the nursery, where Miguel lay in his crib, face flushed, clearly uncomfortable. "Have you called the doctor?" Ricardo asked, touching Miguel's forehead gently. Ana nodded. "Dr. Jensen said it's probably just a virus. To keep him comfortable, give him infant Tylenol and call back if it gets worse." They took turns holding Miguel, who was fussy and restless. Around midnight, his fever spiked and they decided to take him to the emergency room. "I'll drive," Ricardo said, already grabbing the diaper bag. At the hospital, they were quickly taken to an exam room. The doctor confirmed it was likely a common virus, but ordered blood tests to be sure. Throughout the night, they stayed by Miguel's side, neither willing to leave. As dawn broke, Miguel's fever finally began to subside. He fell into a peaceful sleep, exhausted from the ordeal. Ana and Ricardo sat on either side of the hospital. Crib, equally exhausted. "You should get some rest," Ricardo told Ana, noting the dark circles under her eyes. She shook her head. "I'm not leaving him." "Neither am I," Ricardo replied. Their eyes met across the sleeping baby, and in that moment, of shared concern, shared relief, something unspoken passed between them. "We make a good team," Ana said softly. Ricardo reached across the crib, taking her hand in his. "Yes, we do." When they brought Miguel home the next day, both were reluctant to separate. Without discussing it, Ricardo stayed at Ana's house, sleeping on the couch, so they could take turns checking on Miguel through the night. By morning, Miguel was almost back to his normal self, babbling happily as they fed him breakfast. The crisis had passed, but something fundamental had changed between Ana and Ricardo. As Ricardo prepared to leave, finally confident that Miguel was fully recovered, Ana walked him to the door. "Thank you for being here," she said, "for everything." "There's nowhere else I would have been," Ricardo replied truthfully. Ana looked up at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "This arrangement we have, it's become more than I expected." "For me too," Ricardo admitted. They stood close, the air between them charged with possibility. Ricardo found himself drawn to her, wondering what it would be like to cross that line from co-parents to something more. But before either could act on the moment, Miguel's cry from the nursery broke the spell. "He needs his diaper changed," Ana said with a small smile. Ricardo nodded, stepping back. "I should go. I have meetings this afternoon." As he drove home, Ricardo couldn't stop thinking about what had almost happened and what it might mean for their carefully balanced arrangement if something did happen between them. What had started as a temporary solution for Miguel's sake was becoming something far more complicated, with emotions none of them had anticipated. 2 months passed since Miguel's illness. Summer turned to fall, and the co-parenting arrangement between Ricardo and Ana continued to evolve. Miguel, now 8 months old, was thriving. He'd started crawling, babbling more complex sounds, and developing a distinct personality, stubborn like his mother, observant like Ricardo. The three of them had settled into a comfortable routine. Miguel still split his time between both homes, but the strict schedule had relaxed. Sometimes Ana would stay for dinner at Ricardo's after dropping Miguel off. Other times, Ricardo would arrive early for pickup and end up spending the evening at Ana's house, the three of them sharing a meal. On a crisp October evening, Ricardo sat in his office, distracted from the contracts he was supposed to be reviewing. His thoughts kept drifting to Ana and Miguel. Tomorrow was Ana's birthday. He'd arranged a surprise dinner at her favorite restaurant and bought her a simple silver necklace with a pendant in the shape of Miguel's initial. Camila entered with a stack of documents, catching his distant expression. "Earth to Ricardo," she said, waving a hand in front of his face. "Where were you just now?" Ricardo smiled. "Just thinking about tomorrow. It's Ana's birthday." Camila set the documents down. "You've got it bad, boss." "What are you talking about? Please." Camila rolled her eyes. Everyone can see it except maybe you and Anna. You're in love with her." Ricardo started to deny it, then stopped. Was he? The feelings he had for Anna had grown steadily over the months. He admired her strength, her determination, her devotion to Miguel. He looked forward to their conversations, missed her when they were apart. But love? "It's complicated," he finally said. "It always is," Camila replied with a knowing smile, "but maybe not as complicated as you think." That night, Ricardo called Anna to confirm their plans. Miguel would be staying with him while Anna went out with friends from work for her birthday. "Don't forget I'm picking you up at 7 tomorrow night," Ricardo reminded her. "So how could I forget? You've been mysteriously hinting about it all week," Anna laughed. "Miguel's already packed and ready for his sleepover at your house. How is he today?" "Missing you. He keeps looking at that picture of you in the living room and saying, 'Dada.'" Ricardo felt his heart swell. Miguel had started making the sound recently, though neither Anna nor Ricardo had encouraged it specifically. They hadn't discussed what Miguel would call each of them, but hearing that Miguel might see him as a father figure moved Ricardo deeply. "And how are you?" he asked. "Good. Excited about tomorrow." There was a warmth in Anna's voice that hadn't been there when they first met. After they hung up, Ricardo sat thinking about Camila's words. If he was honest with himself, his feelings for Anna had grown far beyond their shared connection to Miguel. But acknowledging those feelings meant risking their careful balance, potentially complicating the life they'd built for Miguel's sake. The next evening, Ricardo arrived at Anna's house precisely at 7. When she opened the door, he was momentarily speechless. She wore a simple blue dress that highlighted her natural beauty, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said, handing her a bouquet of flowers. Anna blushed. "Thank you. These are lovely." Miguel crawled quickly toward Ricardo, babbling excitedly. Ricardo picked him up, throwing him gently in the air as Miguel squealed with delight. "Dada," Miguel said clearly, patting Ricardo's face. Ricardo glanced at Anna, wondering how she felt about this development. "He's been saying it all day," she said softly. "I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay," Ricardo assured her, emotion thick in his voice. After loading Miguel and his things into Ricardo's car, they drove to the restaurant. Ricardo had reserved a private dining room, decorated with candles and flowers. Anna gasped when she saw it. "This is too much," she protested. "Nothing is too much for Miguel's mother," Ricardo replied, pulling out her chair. Over dinner, they talked and laughed, the conversation flowing easily between them. Ricardo found himself watching Anna, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled, how animated she became when talking about her dreams for the future. "I've been meaning to tell you," Anna said as they shared dessert. "I got promoted at work. It's not a huge raise, but it means better hours and health insurance for Miguel." "Anna, that's wonderful," Ricardo said sincerely. "You've worked so hard for this." "It means I can start paying proper rent for the house," she added. "No more special rate." Ricardo shook his head. "That's not necessary." "It is to me," Anna insisted. "I appreciate everything you've done, Ricardo, but I need to stand on my own 2 feet. Her independence was one of the things Ricardo admired most about her. Unlike Sofia, who had seen his wealth as something to enjoy and exploit, Anna had always been uncomfortable accepting too much from him. After dinner, Ricardo gave her the silver necklace. Anna's eyes filled with tears as she opened the box. "It's perfect," she whispered, turning so he could clasp it around her neck. As his fingers brushed against her skin, Ricardo felt a jolt of electricity between them. Hannah must have felt it too because she turned to face him, their eyes meeting with unspoken questions. The moment was interrupted by Ricardo's phone ringing. It was Helena, calling about Miguel. "Everything's fine," she assured him. "He just won't. Settle down for sleep. Keeps asking for both of you." They decided to cut the evening short. When they arrived at Ricardo's house, they found Miguel sitting up in his crib, tired but refusing to sleep. As soon as he saw them, he reached out with both arms. "Mama, Dada!" Anna and Ricardo exchanged glances, both moved by Miguel's clear recognition of them as his parents. Together they got him settled, sitting on either side of the rocking chair as Anna sang a lullaby, and Ricardo rubbed Miguel's back. Within minutes, the baby was asleep. As they tiptoed out of the nursery, Ana turned to Ricardo. "I should go. It's getting late." "Stay," Ricardo said impulsively. "It's your birthday, we have guest rooms, and this way you'll be here when Miguel wakes up." Ana hesitated, then nodded. "That would be nice, thank you." Later, as they sat on the terrace with glasses of wine, Ana looked up at the stars. "I never imagined my life would turn out this way," she said thoughtfully. "Neither did I," Ricardo admitted. "But I wouldn't change it." Ana turned to him. "Not even the crazy co-parenting arrangement with a woman you barely know?" "I think I know you pretty well by now," Ricardo said softly. "And no, especially not that." Their eyes met, and this time there was no interruption, no reason to pull away. Ricardo leaned forward slowly, giving Ana time to back away if she wanted. Instead, she moved toward him, their lips meeting in a gentle, tentative kiss. When they broke apart, Ana looked both happy and concerned. "What does this mean? For us, for Miguel, for our arrangement?" "I don't know," Ricardo answered honestly, "but I'd like to find out." Ana touched his face gently. "So would I." That night changed everything, and nothing. They agreed to take things slowly, to make sure their evolving relationship wouldn't disrupt the stability they'd created for Miguel. They continued the co-parenting schedule, but now their time together took on a new dimension. Over the next 2 months, they gradually became more of a family. Ana and Miguel stayed at Ricardo's house more frequently. Ricardo found reasons to spend nights at Ana's. They were careful around Miguel, wanting to be certain of their relationship before making any permanent changes to his routine. As Christmas approached, Ricardo faced an unexpected business crisis. A major investor was threatening to pull out of a deal that had been months in the making. He needed to fly to Tokyo immediately. "I'll only be gone for 3 days, he told Ana as he packed his suitcase. 4 at the most. "We'll be fine," Ana assured him. "Won't we, Miguel?" Miguel, now an expert crawler racing around Ricardo's bedroom, babbled in agreement. Ricardo knelt down, lifting Miguel into his arms. "I'm going to miss you, little guy." "Dada," Miguel said, patting Ricardo's cheek in what had become their special greeting. The night before his trip, after Miguel was asleep, Ricardo and Ana sat in the living room in front of the Christmas tree they decorated together. "I've been thinking," Ricardo said, taking Ana's hand. "This arrangement we have, moving between 2 houses, it works, but it's becoming complicated." Ana tensed slightly. "What are you suggesting?" "Maybe it's time we consider a more permanent solution, for Miguel's sake." "You want full custody?" Ana asked, her voice tight with sudden worry. Ricardo shook his head quickly. No, I meant maybe we should consider living together." "All of us?" Ana's eyes widened. "Are you asking me to move in with you?" "I'm asking us to be a family," Ricardo clarified. "In whatever way makes the most sense. We could live here or at your house or find a new place together." "Ricardo, are you sure that's a big step?" Ricardo took both her hands in his. "Ana, these past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. Not just because of Miguel, but because of you. I never expected to find someone like you, someone strong, kind, principled, someone who makes me want to be better." Ana's eyes filled with tears. "I never expected you either. When I left Miguel that night, I was desperate, hopeless. I never imagined finding not just a safe place for my son, but what?" Ricardo prompted when she trailed off. "But a partner," Ana finished. "Someone who respects me, who sees me as an equal, even when our circumstances are so different." Ricardo cupped her face gently. "I love you, Ana, both of you. And I want us to be a real family." Ana leaned into his touch. "I love you too, but I need you to understand something. I don't want to be taken care of to live off your money. That's important to me. I know and I respect that. We'll figure it out together." They talked long into the night, planning their future. By morning, they had decided that after Ricardo returned from Tokyo, they would begin the process of truly merging their lives. Ricardo's trip to Tokyo was grueling but successful. After 3 days of intense negotiations, he salvaged the deal and was eager to return home to Ana and Miguel. As his private jet prepared for takeoff, he called Anna. "I'm about to board. I should be home by tomorrow night." "We can't wait," Anna said. "Miguel took his first steps yesterday. I recorded it for you." Ricardo felt a pang at missing the milestone, but smiled at Anna's excitement. "I'll see you both soon. I love you." "We love you too," Anna replied. "Travel safe." Halfway across the Pacific Ocean, Ricardo was reviewing documents when the plane encountered unexpected turbulence. The captain's voice came over the intercom instructing everyone to fasten their seatbelts. Ricardo complied, not particularly concerned. He'd experienced turbulence many times before, but this was different. The plane shuddered violently, dropping. Altitude suddenly. Oxygen masks deployed from the ceiling. The last thing Ricardo remembered was reaching for his mask as the world tilted sideways. Anna was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang. Miguel was in his high chair, happily smashing peas. Wiping her hands on a towel, Anna went to the door, expecting perhaps a package delivery. Instead, she found Eduardo and Camila standing on the porch, their faces grave. "What's wrong?" Anna asked immediately, her heart beginning to race. "Is it Ricardo?" Eduardo nodded solemnly. "There's been an accident. Ricardo's plane went down over the Pacific." Anna felt the world shift beneath her feet. "No, that's not possible. I just spoke to him." "Search and rescue teams are already looking," Camila said, her voice breaking. "But they're saying there's very little chance of survivors." The next days passed in a blur of grief and disbelief. News of the crash dominated headlines worldwide. "Billionaire presumed dead in Pacific plane crash. Search." Teams found debris but no survivors. After a week, the search was scaled back. After 2, it was officially classified as a recovery mission rather than a rescue. Anna moved through these days like a sleepwalker, caring for Miguel mechanically while her heart shattered. At night, alone in the bedroom she'd shared with Ricardo during his final days at home, she allowed herself to break down. Miguel seemed to sense something was terribly wrong. He called for Dada constantly, looking around as if Ricardo might appear at any moment. Friends and colleagues filled the house, offering support and condolences. Eduardo handled business matters, ensuring that operations continued. Camila helped Anna navigate the practical aspects of the crisis, shielding her from the press who camped outside the gates, hungry for a story about the billionaire's unlikely family. A month after the crash, with no body recovered, a memorial service was held. Hundreds attended, business associates, employees, friends. Anna sat in the front row, Miguel on her lap, feeling oddly disconnected from the eulogies describing a man these people had known for years, yet somehow different from the Ricardo she had come to love. After the service, Eduardo approached her. "We need to discuss Ricardo's will and the future of the company." Anna nodded numbly. "Of course." The next day, she met with Eduardo and Rebecca Torres, Ricardo's lawyer, in his home office, a room that still felt full of his presence. "Ricardo updated his will 3 weeks ago," Rebecca explained, opening a folder. "He left very specific instructions." Anna listened in shock as Rebecca detailed Ricardo's provisions. He had left trust funds for both Miguel and Anna, ensuring they would never want for anything. The house they lived in was now Anna's. But most surprisingly, he had left controlling interest in his company to be held in trust for Miguel, with Anna, as trustee until Miguel reached majority. "He wanted Miguel to have his legacy," Rebecca explained, "and he trusted you to protect it for him." Eduardo looked uncomfortable with this arrangement, but resigned. "Ricardo also left this for you," he said, handing Anna an envelope. "He asked that you read it privately." That night, after putting Miguel to bed, Anna finally opened the envelope. Inside was a letter in Ricardo's handwriting. "My dearest Anna, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. I hope it's years from now when we're old and gray, but I've learned that life often has other plans. The day I found Miguel was the day my life truly began, and the day I met you was when it found its meaning. You showed me what real strength looks like, what true love can be. I've arranged for you and Miguel to be taken care of, but I know that's not what matters most to you. What matters is that Miguel grows up knowing he was loved, by both of us. Tell him about me, about how we became a family. Tell him that sometimes the most precious things come to us in the most unexpected ways. You made me believe in second chances, in the possibility of a happiness I never thought I deserved. For that alone, I would love you eternally. Take care of our son. Help him become the man you would be proud of. And know that wherever I am watching over both of you, my unexpected, perfect family. All my love, always. Ricardo. Ana pressed the letter to her heart, tears streaming down her face. In the nursery next door, Miguel stirred in his sleep as, if sensing her pain. 6 months passed. Spring returned, bringing new life to the gardens Ricardo had loved. Ana had taken on her role as Miguel's trustee with the same determination she brought to everything, learning the business with Eduardo's reluctant guidance, ensuring that Ricardo's legacy would be preserved for their son. Life settled into a new normal. Miguel, now 14 months old, was walking confidently, his vocabulary growing daily. Ana made sure he saw pictures of Ricardo regularly, telling him stories about his father, keeping his memory alive. On a warm Saturday morning, Ana took Miguel to the park they had often visited as a family. As Miguel played in the sandbox, she sat on a bench watching him with a mixture of joy and sadness. "Excuse me," a voice said beside her. "Is this seat taken?" Ana looked up, then froze, unable to believe what she was seeing. Standing before her, thinner and with a beard, but unmistakably alive, was Ricardo. "No," she whispered, rising shakily to her feet. "This isn't possible. You're dead." Ricardo stepped closer, his eyes filled with emotion. "I'm not. It's really me, Ana." Ana reached out tentatively, touching his face, feeling warm skin beneath her fingers. "How?" "I was thrown clear during the crash, washed up on a small island," Ricardo explained quickly. "I've been trying to get home to you both for months." Miguel, noticing the commotion, looked up from his sandbox. His eyes widened and he let out a shriek of pure joy. "Dada!" he screamed, scrambling to his feet and running toward Ricardo as fast as his little legs could carry him. Ricardo knelt down, catching Miguel in his arms, holding him tight as tears streamed down his face. "Yes, Miguel, it's Dada. I'm home." Ana watched, her heart overflowing with emotions she couldn't name, shock, disbelief, overwhelming joy. As Ricardo stood, still holding Miguel, he reached for her with his free arm. "I never stopped trying to get back to you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every day, every moment, you two were all I thought about." Ana fell into his embrace, the three of them holding each other, as passers-by stared at the emotionally charged reunion. "We thought you were gone forever," Ana sobbed against his chest. "I promised you we would be a family," Ricardo whispered, holding them both tight. "And I intend to keep that promise." Later, as they sat in the living room of their home, Miguel refused to leave Ricardo's lap, falling asleep against his chest. Ricardo explained everything, how he'd survived the crash, been rescued by fishermen, spent weeks in a remote village recovering from injuries, struggled to prove his identity without documents. "The search teams looked for weeks," Ana said, still trying to process his miraculous return. "They were looking in the wrong place," Ricardo explained. "The storm had carried me much farther than anyone realized." As Miguel slept peacefully between them, untroubled by the miracle of his father's return, Ricardo took Ana's hand. "While I was on that island, not knowing if I'd ever see you again, I made a promise," he said softly. "I promised that if I got another chance, I wouldn't waste a single day." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small handcrafted ring, crude but beautiful, made from materials he'd found during his ordeal. "I made this while waiting for rescue," he explained. "I had no fancy jewelry, no diamonds, but I poured all my love for you into it." Ana stared at the simple ring, more precious to her than any diamond could ever be. "Ana Oliveira, will you marry me? Will you make our family official?" Tears streaming down her face, Ana nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, with all my heart." Ricardo slipped the makeshift ring onto her finger. "I'll get you a proper one tomorrow." "No," Ana said firmly, looking at the simple band with love. "This is perfect. This is our story." As the sun set outside their window, the three of them sat together, a family formed not by blood or birth, but by chance, choice, and love. Miguel stirred in his sleep, his small hand gripping Ricardo's shirt as if to make sure his father couldn't disappear again. "The baby of destiny," Ricardo murmured, stroking Miguel's hair gently. Ana leaned against his shoulder, her heart full. It was never just about Miguel, was it? It was about all of us finding each other. Some people spend their whole lives searching for what we found by accident, Ricardo agreed. A family, a home, love. Outside, the world continued turning. There would be explanations to give, paperwork to file, a business to reclaim. But those things could wait. For now, all that mattered was this moment. A moment they had never expected to have. A second chance they had never dared to hope for. The baby who had been abandoned in a restaurant bathroom had not only found a home and a family. He had created one, bringing together two people who might never have met otherwise, teaching them both the most important lesson of all. Sometimes, the greatest blessings come from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, against all odds, love finds a way to come home. The end.